Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Chad Ammond, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce.
Hello and welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections. I'm your host, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce, Chad Ammond. I am pleased to have on the show today Jim Gallick and Carlotta Page. Jim and Carlotta are key members with the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition. Jim and Carlotta, thanks very much for being on the show. We're going to start it off with Carlotta. Carlotta, give me a little bit of, and the listeners, a little bit of background of how you are interconnected with Westmoreland County and your background and why you are a part of the Diversity Coalition.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for having us, Chad. We appreciate the opportunity. The coalition is very important, and I'm glad you're giving other people an opportunity to know about it, or more people, I should say. Anyway, I am interconnected, as you say, to Westmoreland County because I was born here. I was born here, my parents were born here, a couple of their parents were born here, so I am a native of Westmoreland County, and I love Westmoreland County. It is, the quality of life here is good. I went away for about 20 years, and when I came back, nothing had changed. And that's one of the reasons why I think the coalition is important. Now, when I say nothing has changed, I just, I mean that it hadn't progressed in terms of people's attitude and making people welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, though, first. I left here and went to New York and worked for the mayor. I had a number of senior executive positions in government and quasi-government. I have 20 plus years experience in nonprofit and healthcare administration. I had my own business. I've traveled the country. So I have good sense of, I should say, the country and some cases the world. So when I came back, the first thing I did was...
When did you come back, Carlotta?
I came back in 92.
Okay.
Found myself a husband in New York, brought him back with me, and he loved this place.
Was he from New York?
He was a New York City guy,
yeah.
And he absolutely loved it here. You know, we would go fishing and camping and all of those things, and he just loved it here. So we had no problem rerouting ourselves after we got married. Anyway, I used to be, 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more, president of the NAACP.
Okay.
And as president of the NAACP, I think that's when I sort of started my quest for this kind of work. I just think it's important that people feel welcome where they live. The quality of life is good, but you need to feel welcome. You need to feel like you are part of the fabric of where you live. And when people don't accept you for who you are, you don't feel that way. So I've been on this quest, I guess, for a while.
For a little while, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, Jim, I want to get your background and why you are part of the Diversity Coalition here in Westmoreland County. Give us a little bit about your background and why you're part of it.
Thank you, Chad. Although I'm not currently a resident of Westmoreland County, I live on the other side of the Conemaugh River in Indiana County, but I worked in Westmoreland County for 30 years, and I lived in the county for about 24 years. And my religious congregation is in Westmoreland County in Ligonier, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ligonier Valley. And part of one of our principles is to promote the respect and dignity of every person, and whenever we can, to work and promote social justice. So I became involved with, first of all, with a couple of, in fact, we helped to found a couple of LGBTQ advocacy organizations in Westmoreland County. One of them is P-Flag Greensburg, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and the other one is the Westmoreland LGBTQ Interfaith Network. And through my involvement with that, and also as president of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ligonier Valley, I met Carlotta and found out about the Diversity Coalition. And our LGBTQ organizations became part of, I think, what Carla will talk about, the annual Unity celebration. And through that, I was invited, and my significant other, Gene Slusser, was invited to become a more active part of the Diversity Coalition. And so I'm very happy to be involved in this very exciting work, and I'm happy to be here with you today.
Well, I'm glad that you are both here on the show. But for the listeners, I think that I know what the Diversity Coalition's history and the mission and the goals are. But I think for the listeners, there's probably a lot of people in the community that need to know more about what the Diversity Coalition is. I mean, maybe you could, if you could give a recap of the history and the mission and the goals of the organization.
Okay. Well, first of all, the Diversity Coalition is a membership nonprofit organization. It's a 501c3. It's a newly formed community-based nonprofit, and it evolved over time from the Unity Coalition. There used to be an organization called an organization called the Central Westmoreland Unity Coalition, and that coalition was formed in response to the KKK coming to town and demonstrating on Courthouse Square. So for about 20 years, the Unity Coalition would have an annual Unity rally, and after a while, interest started dropping, and different people started coming to the table. A lot of different groups. Jim just talked about the LGBT community and others. So we decided, well, we really need to do something. We really need to have an organization that represents everybody, not just ethnics and race, and but everybody. So the Diversity Coalition was born. It's only been incorporated since June of 16.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a new nonprofit, and I must say people are receiving it very well. Our representation, we're looking for diverse representation. We want geographic representation because,
You mean geographic all over the county?
All over the county, because towns like Monessen and New Kensington, they don't necessarily feel, welcome or as part of the community. So we are really making an effort.
It is a difficult. It is a large county. I just did the study. It was Westmoreland County is a roughly 100 square miles shy of the same size as the state of Rhode Island. So if you're living in Donegal, you have a trip to go to New Ken, and if you're living in Seward, you have a trip to go to Monessen. So it is a very large county, and sometimes those communities in the outer regions of the county sometimes feel as though they are not connected as much to the center part of the county. Right.
So we're making an effort to do that. We have the new mayor of Monessen on our board. We're getting ready to do some things with Penn State New Ken. So we're looking for geographic, ethnic, racial diversity, gender diversity, age diversity, faith-based diversity, special needs, armed services, government. So we're looking for everybody to work together. And our goal is to, let me say this first, and I always point this out, that the best thing about Westmoreland County is the thing that creates the greatest barrier, and that is the rich cultural heritage. That is one of the best things about it. But it's that same cultural heritage that creates a barrier and people don't feel welcome. It's like the people who have lived here for years and years don't want to welcome other people here. Other people don't feel welcome. If you're not from here, you don't feel welcome here. So anyway, our mission is to create through advocacy and education an atmosphere of understanding and unity where all people feel welcome. And it's interesting that the new county plan called Reimagining Westmoreland is named that because I reimagine Westmoreland as a place where all people feel welcome. I'm going to let Jim talk about that.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. I'm your host, Chad Emmon, president of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. We are talking with Jim Gallick and Carlotta Page. Jim and Carlotta are key members of the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition, an organization that it focuses on respect, equality, and dignity throughout all of Westmoreland County. Jim, why do you think that there is a need for such an organization? Carlotta touched on it a little bit, that we have a rich heritage. I mean, if Westmoreland County doesn't exist, I don't know that our nation would exist. I mean, you go back to the Fort Ligonier and things like that. Obviously, Westmoreland County has a rich heritage and history, but we are an evolving world. And why does an organization like the Diversity Coalition need to exist?
Well, I guess, Chad, whenever you want to understand the need for organizations like our Diversity Coalition, you have to talk about some things that are kind of uncomfortable to talk about. And one of those things is the demographic makeup of Westmoreland County, specifically in terms of racial demographics. At the moment, and for as far as I know, Westmoreland County's population is 95% white, and African American or black people or people of color represent about 2.5% of the population, and other minorities represent even smaller amounts. And so one of the things that happens whenever a particular demographic area like Westmoreland County is predominantly one
race,
made up of people of one particular race, then those people that make up that majority become uncomfortable with people who come into the area from other races, and then we have to start talking about things like, well, why is it that way? And it's because of past discriminatory practices through various institutions from the federal government and the real estate and banking industries, and so that's kind of how it became that way. It didn't just happen that way. It was I don't know if it was intentionally designed that way, but it because of discriminatory policies and practices. And so one of the things that we would like to do is to first of all educate ourselves about what happens in places like Westmoreland County that are predominantly people of one race, and I think we have to talk about the concept that I'm just learning about more of is the idea of unconscious bias, and that's what's sometimes referred to as stereotypical thinking about people that are different from us. And so we've been planning some activities to both educate ourselves and people in the community, leaders and other people interested in the county, and how to make this great county an even better place for all of us to live. And we're going to talk, if we have time today, we'll talk about a couple of the events that we have planned to help us understand this situation and how we can all work together.
We are going to talk about that. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. We'll be right back after these messages.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1220. 1200.
Welcome back. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. I'm your host, Chad Ammond, president of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. Our guests today are Jim Gallick and Carlotta Page. Carlotta and Jim are part of the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition. Before we went to break, we were talking about demographic information, and Westmoreland County, as compared to the rest of the nation, is a very undiverse population. We have 360,000 people in the county, and 95% of those people are Caucasian. Carlotta, one of the things that we are worried about in the county is if you look at the demographics and you look at the population loss. In the 1980s, Westmoreland County had 390,000 people. Today we are under 360,000 people. So we have lost about 30,000 plus people in the county. One of the things that we have to focus on is maintaining or stabilizing our population loss. How can the Diversity Coalition impact the population loss in the county?
Well, I think that it's important to understand that at the core of the coalition is the belief that the complicated, interrelated but subtle social issues that have existed in Westmoreland County for many years can only be addressed through long-range, consistent efforts and sustained commitment for people to change. People are basically good. Like Jim said, people are uncomfortable with people unlike themselves, but we need to understand that everybody's not like us. I think that we have to have things here in the county for the young people to want to stay here and want to come here. It's not just an issue of minorities and ethnicity. It's really an issue of what can we offer.
Yeah.
We don't offer an awful lot at this time. So I think that we have to come up with ways to make people interested in staying in the county. I also think we have to make people feel welcome. We have a lot of foreign-born people, doctors, you have their families, their children, and people, when they come here, there needs to be a resource available to them so that they know how to connect. When you're not connected, it's not comfortable. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to live someplace, you need to be connected to it. So I think we also need to understand that we're not going to change it overnight. I don't want people thinking that we think that we can change it overnight. We can't. We have to work together. We have to... I think it's sort of like we have to have a dogged commitment to do it. But we're doing things like offering training on unconscious bias. We're keeping the topic on the surface.
How do you take an issue like this? Because it's an uncomfortable issue for many people to talk about. I mean, I appreciate you being on Westmoreland Community Connections to have this conversation. But how do you get the people? How do you get? There are listeners out here, I'm sure, that are listening to the show. They're saying, "Oh, this is politically correct," or "This is a political issue. This is something." How do we get that to change that from politics and politically correctness and things that are? I don't know how to describe it, but just to be welcoming people into the community and say, "Hey, you know what? I don't care if you're purple with pink polka dots, as long as you have a good job and you're paying your taxes and you are a good person, I don't care what color you are or what race you are or who you're dating or something like that." How do you get past the political correctness stuff to make sure that we're just making the community a better place to live?
Well, first of all, I don't know about Jim, but me, I'm the least politically correct person. And as a result, I've been labeled I'm stereotyped as an angry black woman.
Oh, okay.
Because, that's a stereotype. And because I'm not politically correct. I mean, I think that it's important for people to encourage each other. I think each one, it's sort of like an each one teach one, and that's why I say it's a very slow process. I think we can teach people by having training classes like unconscious bias. I think if people talk to one another, I think if people can do just small things like saying hello to each other, don't be frightened if somebody doesn't look like you. I mean, I must tell you that as an African-American woman, I like to call myself a black woman, as a black woman living in this county, that I run into a lot of problems. But on the other hand, people are wonderful. Last week, I just made an effort to sort of pay attention to how many times people were good to me and how many times they weren't. Not that everybody has to be good to me, but how many times someone, unlike myself, opened a door for me or said hello to me, or just started a conversation with me, and how many times I was followed around the store or whatever. And I must tell you, the good experiences far outweighed the bad experiences.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a step forward. Jim, what's your perspective on how we can make this not a political issue?
Thank you, Chad. That's a really good question, and also it's a very difficult question to answer. As Carlotta was talking, I was trying to think of what would be some things that we all can do to help create an atmosphere of greater understanding in the county. And I think probably the first important thing for us all to do, and I think Carlotta evidenced this in her comment about how almost all the time people are respectful of her and treat her nice. And I think that's one of the key things, is to just be nice to one another, respect one another.
Maybe focus on the positives.
Yes, and particularly when we're talking with and about people that are different from us, is to understand that the differences, although they appear to be somewhat significant, the differences are really small, and all of us have much more in common with one another than we're different from one another. And I think so the first thing is to be able to respect one another, and I think the second thing would be to educate ourselves and learn about one another. And like people like you and I are in positions where we have opportunities to meet with and interact with people who are different from us, and that's a great opportunity for us, is to, when we do talk with a person who we perceive to be different from us, is to spend at least part of that time learning about that person. And again, it gets back to respect for one another, and respect for ourselves too.
Do you see with the embracing of more diverse population, do you see a difference with the younger population as opposed to the aging population? Because one of the things that we have here in Westmoreland County is we have an aging population. In 2020, almost a third of our population is going to be 65 or older. Is that an issue that is impacting the embracement of diversity?
Yes, I think that older people are sort of set in their ways, and they live by the rules that they were brought up on, by the environment that they were in as they were growing up. I think the younger people think for themselves and that they're much more open. However, the whole issue of unconscious bias addresses this issue, because even the young people are sometimes affected by how the older people think. Mm-hmm. So I think, by just opening up your mind and just being objective is very, very helpful. I think It's interesting. I'm sorry that our vice chair, or co-chair, my co-chair, Rabbi Sarah Perman, couldn't be here because I think she speaks to this issue a lot as being, a Jewish person in the community, and how people just aren't aware of how they offend her and the other people in the Jewish community by simply lack of knowledge. But I think young people are doing, are not allowing all of those things to taint their thinking and to affect how they interact with other people, or who's their friend and who's not their friend. Let me just say one quick thing, and that is that I always think about the number of interracial couples there are in Westmoreland County. There are a lot of them. I call it the Browning of Westmoreland County. And how the minority population is increasing as a result of that. So the raw numbers you see, if you add mixed race with the existing numbers, they go up at least 2 or 3%.
Wow.
So there's a lot of that.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. I'm your host, Chad Ammon, president of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. We're talking with Jim Gallick and Carlotta Page from the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition. We have a few minutes to wrap things up for this edition of Westmoreland Community Connections. Jim, I want to talk about how somebody can be a member of the Diversity Coalition, and what are some of the upcoming events that you are planning to host in the near future.
Thank you, Chad. Regarding your first question about how to become a member of the coalition, is you can do that by simply getting in touch with either Carlotta, myself, or Rabbi Perman. You can visit our website, the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition website, and the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition Facebook page, and it has information on there about how to become a member or to support the organization. The name of the website is wdcoalition.org. And as you mentioned, we're planning some events in the near future to help promote the whole idea of diversity and the idea of unconscious bias. And one of those events we're doing in collaboration with the Westmoreland Museum of American Art. We're having a nationally known speaker and leader in the field of anthropology and human relations, Dr. Jonetta Betch-Cole, who is a consultant with an organization called Cook-Ross. And Dr. Cole, in addition to having a PhD in anthropology, is an educator, a museum director, and has been the president of the 2 historic colleges for black women. And she's going to appear at a breakfast at 7:30 in the morning on Thursday, May 24th at the Westmoreland Museum of American Art, and then she's going to also meet with some people a little bit after that at the Westmoreland Community Foundation, which is just north of town. Another very we think is key event in helping us move along this whole idea of educating ourselves and providing opportunities for members of the county to become educated is a program that we're co-sponsoring with the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg, and that is unconscious bias training workshops. We're going to have 4 workshops over a period of 2 days in June. And again, you can go to the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition website or the Facebook page to find out how to participate in that event. And another thing that's still in the planning stages is that we're planning a series of town hall events to give an opportunity for the youth and young adults of Westmoreland County to enter into the conversation about how to make Westmoreland County a more welcoming place. And those events, I think at this point, they're going to be held at the Penn State campus at New Kensington, the Westmoreland County Community College, St. Vincent's College, and Monessen High School. And those are going to be happening, we think, sometime in the coming school year in the fall.
Right.
And so those are just some of the things that we're doing. And, of course, we also have our annual Unity Celebration, which will be on Wednesday, October 24th at the Lakeview Banquet Hall near Greensburg.
If any of the listeners want to jump on the Diversity Coalition's website, it's wdcoalition.org. Jim Gallick and Carlotta Page from the Westmoreland Diversity Coalition, thank you very much for being on the show. We appreciate the work that you're doing here in Westmoreland County. And if any of the listeners want to jump on the page, it's wdcoalition.org, or you can find them on Facebook. Just search Westmoreland Diversity Coalition. Jim and Carlotta, thank you very much for being on the show.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Chad. It was a wonderful experience for both of us.
You've been listening to the Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Join us next week, same time, same place, for another edition of Westmoreland Community Connections. Thanks for listening, everyone.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB.